Hello and welcome to the Where Does It Come From podcast. I'm absolutely delighted this time to welcome Georgina Wilson-Powell. Welcome, Georgina.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Right, first of all, rather than me talking about you, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and especially what drove you towards focusing on sustainability and setting up Pebble Magazine?
Yeah, sure. So I am the founder of Pebble Magazine. It's been going for about 4.5 years now. I haven't always worked in sustainability. I come from a media background, so I've been editing magazines that mostly had to do with sort of travel and food for the last sort of 10 or 15 years. And before I worked for Pebble and launched Pebble, I was working for a long time in the Middle East and flying all over the world, being incredibly lucky, having a sort of glamorous job reviewing hotels. And for a few years, it was absolutely wonderful and I loved every moment of it. But I had this creeping sensation of climate anxiety, what we now call flight shame, carbon guilt, whatever you want to call the expressions. And I kept looking at all of the plastic that I was consuming. Obviously, being in the Middle East, all your water is from single-use plastic bottles. The amount I kind of went through living in airports and living on convenience food, and it just started to overwhelm me that this was my footprint and I didn't want it to be my footprint. And then thinking about, timesing that by billions and billions of people, and started to get very sort of concerned about our consumption levels, really. And when I came back to the UK, I was pitching in loads of different, or trying to pitch in loads of different stories to newspapers and magazines around things like ethical fashion, around slow travel, around, refills and all those kind of things. And this was sort of 2015, 2016. And it really wasn't on people's agendas. And I was told it wouldn't sell newspapers. And, you could perhaps contribute to a green issue that we're going to put out in 18 months' time. And alarm bells were just ringing in my head of like, we've got to do stuff now, and getting quite concerned about it all. So I decided to take the bull by the horns and launch my own magazine, which I'd done before, but not for a long time, and make it all digital so that the content was free and accessible to everybody, no matter where they are, and really try and bring together all of the wonderful innovation and inventions and incredible goings on and incredible people that are all working on sustainable solutions in a variety of industries. So that's what Pebble does. It brings together positive stories from every industry, from food and drink to travel to fashion, skincare, all sorts of different things. We recommend products, we test things, we try and help people find simple, sustainable swaps and solutions as much as possible. And we really try and sort of anchor ourselves in sort of practical and accessible advice for people. So it's not all pie in the sky stuff, and it's not all, don't spend any money ever. We're somewhere nicely in the middle. And since then, we've grown and grown and grown. So last year, we actually reached over 1 million readers, which is the first time we've done that, which felt really good to end the year on. We're now a team of 11. Which is up from 2 this time last year. So last year was pretty mental. And we now also have a big digital community, which we host on Mighty Networks, called Ripples, which is for sustainable change makers. And we have lots of virtual events in there and book clubs and monthly topics going on and lots of conversations. So that's become a really friendly, positive place. And we have about 1,400 members in there. And then we used to do, Joe, which I'm sure you've come to, our Pebble Fest events.
Yes, yeah. I didn't get to the Pebble Fest events, the real ones in London. I didn't get to, but we've done some events together in the past.
Yes, we have, haven't we? Hopefully, we'll be bringing back those in-person events in October. I think. Keeping everything crossed. Hopefully, in October this year, we're going to bring back a big two-day event. Yes, very unique event. 2 days, hopefully. So yeah, keep everything crossed for that.
Yes, no, that's brilliant. I think
everything we do.
But it's very interesting in what you were saying actually about you've kind of lived the life of that now you're slightly looking back on thinking, gosh, you shouldn't have done. But I mean, honestly, how could you have known any better at the time? But I think I see a lot when I talk to people, especially people that are not sort of really young in their 20s, no offense here, that you kind of gained the experience in your life, and then that's informed your decision making. And a lot of people then talk about how they want to put something in place to help other people get to that decision making a bit easier, you know. So as you were saying, Pebble covers a whole gamut of areas. It's not one area, it's everything you could think of. And I bet you if someone came up with something you weren't covering, you'd cover it. But I think, yeah, exactly. So I think it's really interesting how many people do that. They go, well, I made these mistakes when I look back with hindsight, but now it's about making your journey easier, which I think is a fabulous thing. I really do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, it's not about judging people. It's not about sort of saying, oh, I did this and you shouldn't. You know, and I know there's a lot of sort of big sort of people get very upset, you know, people tell them to do one thing and then do another, and you know, several celebrities are definitely guilty of that kind of thing. But I think for us it's more about, you know, this information didn't exist very easily a few years ago, and now we can make that journey of discovery a lot easier. And also people are time poor, you know, people want convenience, they want all the answers as quickly as possible. So I think that's part of the role that we play. So we do a lot of research, we do a lot of reviewing. And we're in the lucky position where most sort of sustainable startups will come across us and send us information and let us know what's happening. So we're very much at the cutting edge of a lot of industries, and we can see those trends coming through. So if we can kind of combine all of that information and package it up and make it super accessible and super helpful, then that's hopefully using my skills for good. Exactly right. Can't do other things.
Yeah, I mean, I always say it's like a roadmap, isn't it? Everyone's on a different place. Absolutely. And you don't know where they are. There could be somebody who's still flying around the Middle East, but if they find Pebble Magazine and then that helps them at the point they are in their journey, then it can move, you know, them forward in their journey, where someone else might pick it up at a different place in their journey and it speaks to them. So it's all about I agree with you entirely, not judging, not pointing the finger. It's all too easy to have this whataboutism, you know, you say I'm doing something good, yeah, but what about that time you took a plane back in 1784 or something like that?
We've all lived, you know, we've all lived our lives, we've all done things, we've been out in the world, and I think, you know, for one reason or another, perhaps we weren't aware of all the consequences of our actions, or we didn't have the opportunity to do something different, or we didn't have the budgets and money to actually have those choices. So I think, you know, where you can and where you do, then let's see how we can make that easier. And I think, yeah, everyone's on their own journey, and also everyone's got a different role to play. You know, we can't all be Greta Thunberg, we can't all do the same solution. We've got to sort of find our own path, I think.
No, I think that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. No, it's all really, really interesting. What you've been doing with Pebble, you know, and I wish you huge success with it. I want to go slightly wider now, because here we are in January, the beginning of 2022. 2021 has been a fascinating year. You know, we're both climate activists, or whatever you want to call us, in our own way, activists anyway, and it's been a very interesting year, 2021. I mean, the IPCC report in July talking about being a code red for humanity. And then, of course, COP26, which has taken so much energy and thought. You know, there's been highs, there's been lows, it's been like a soap opera, really. But I think all of that has led to a rising awareness in society and within business of the need to now focus on the environment and to make changes in the way that, you know, the way that they do business, the way that people live as individuals. So this is like a really big question, but what do you think need to be the big focus areas now to move us forward in 2022?
So I've got a few things I wrote down, and I was thinking about this question earlier, and I think one of the things I just want to start with before sort of dive into a couple of the other topics is actually, I think last year was such a roller coaster year for anyone involved in sustainability or anyone involved in activism, and coming on the back of 2020, which was just hard for everybody. I think there's an awful lot of sort of self-care that almost needs to be done at the beginning of this year as well, and making sure that we've got energy levels back and that we're feeling balanced and we're feeling like we can take on extra, you know, extra work and extra responsibility, because I think without watching ourselves, you know, we don't want to burn out. And I think a lot of people have burnt out after the, you know, quite alarming IPCC report, and then the COP juggernaut, let's call it. I don't know about you, but I was just drained after all of that, and kind of feeling a bit lost, because you build up to COP and you build up to all these, like, the governments are going to come together and we're going to move forward as humanity, and that didn't really happen. So I think there's a lot of disappointment. I think there's a lot of people feeling deflated, and also, but at the same time, you've got this sort of other wave of people at the start of that journey who have started to come on board and want to make changes. So yeah, it is a really interesting time. The thing that people keep coming back to that I keep speaking to at the moment, and that we're very much focused on at the moment, is systems change. And I think as those conversations around individual impact and what we're all swapping to, whether it's a bamboo toothbrush or you're looking at an electric car or whatever it is, it's going to reach a point where you can't make any more changes. Or you might not be able to make any of those changes because of budgetary reasons or other reasons. And actually, individually, we need more. We need those industries to change. We need the governments to change. We need the systems that we are set up to run on to change. And that's the really, really difficult bit, because as well, you were talking about ancient infrastructure, you're talking about national and international budgets.
Well, it's economic systems as well. Our whole economic system is based on producing a lot, selling it cheap, not caring where it came from. It does my head in.
That's it. And I think that and mindset as well, this like infinite growth, infinite profit. I think there are so many people now calling for different ways of doing things, whether that's a different economic model, whether that's a different way of running a business, of working even. That I think those changes will start to happen, but we need to sort of speed that up as much as we can. And that's difficult for individuals.
Yes, and we don't want to scare people, because I think those of us who perhaps have been a bit more aware of some of the issues, and maybe we're the kinds of people that find it easier to take those things on board. As for a lot of people, change is very difficult and threatening and fear-making, and it's about trying to bring them along, because we've talked about this before, but 2020 and COVID, it showed it could be done. People could make change really, really quickly, but there was a huge price in mental health. If you kind of got to be able to make the changes that are necessary without frightening people,
That's it, and actually show people what could exist beyond what we're doing already, and that it's not a case of sacrificing things, and that you're going to move into this, like, I don't know, post-apocalyptic state or something like that. It's not as dramatic as that. It's actually like, how can we make things better for ourselves?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I always say to people.
Balance.
Better health, you're walking a bit more, you're eating better food, you're eating local produce. It's just about trying to show people that by being more green, their lives actually get better. I've referred to this before, but months ago I interviewed a chap on the podcast, and he was talking about green energy, but he actually said during the podcast, which I love, why do people think this is as good as it gets? Why should this be as good as it gets? We can get better than this. This isn't the area of life we want to hang on to. We want to be improving it.
Definitely. And we've lost all of that somewhere along the line. We've lost that imagination to go, okay, well, this is how we've always done it, but why don't we change it to make it better or more equal for more people? Or, I think there's so much more that we could all be doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had this thought over Christmas and New Year, because I went to after COVID, I was like you, a bit drained, and then I was sort of trying to think about things and get on with the day job and things. And I remember thinking over Christmas, what can I really do to bring about some of these system change, economic, these big things as an individual? What can I do? And I actually took the decision to join the Green Party, which might not seem very much, but I thought I'm kind of nailing my colours to the mast now and saying I'm going to be part of this, and I want to get involved, more and more involved where time allows, because I think it needs to be bigger, doesn't it, than the bamboo toothbrush, like you say.
And I think those products and the services that we all want to look at and swap to and stuff, we're always going to, it's not that we don't need them, we desperately need those as well from the consumer side. But I think actually understanding our place in the world without being a consumer, so how can we involve ourselves in local politics, in national politics, how can we support those people that are really waving the flag and being sort of far more activist than perhaps we want to be. We had a lovely session a little while ago in the community with Ella Daish, the period plastic campaigner, and she made the really good point that not everybody has to be the placard waving activist, and not everyone has to start their own thing. You can support what's there already, like joining the Green Party, obviously they're incredibly established, but you could support a local campaign that already exists if you don't want to start your own. And I think trying to see where our skills slot in and help is really, really key. The one thing that I sort of said to myself I'm going to tackle at the moment and try and push on that is actually looking at where like my money is. So your bankings, your investments, your pensions. As a freelance journalist, I've not had much of a pension, but what money I do have. I'm looking at sort of different ways of investing that via various sort of ethical finance apps that are coming through the niche of the market. Looking at changing my bank account, because I read a sort of statistic a while ago saying that actually where you invest your money can actually have sort of 21 times more impact than sort of reducing your meat and dairy and flying less and swapping to renewables. And I just thought, actually, if your money's sitting there in your bank account, it's a kind of admin swap, but then it's done. And actually, that's for me, that's a sort of focus.
Yeah, and that's an incredibly, I wouldn't say easy, because obviously there's a bit of a change there, but it's incredibly straightforward step for people to take, to literally put their money where their mouth is, isn't it? Because you're not supporting, you stop supporting these businesses that are doing things that we don't think are right, but it's far enough pushed away from us that we don't have to think about it. You just think, I'm investing it in this bank and they'll sort all that out. But now we need to say, well, hang on, what are they actually spending my money on when when I'm not using it?
And a lot of those FTSE funds that regular ISAs are linked to, or high street banks are involved in, they have no filter of what they invest in.
No.
I was going to start talking about morals, but I'm not going to. They will be investing in fracking. They'll be investing in fossil fuels still, or a lot of high street banks are still investing in fossil fuels. So I think if those kind of things don't fit with your values, then putting the work in to find an alternative is actually really powerful, and it also sends a message to the people still doing it that actually it's not that popular anymore.
Exactly, but I think they know, because I think there's a huge amount of greenwashing going on in that industry. I mean, we won't try not to digress too much into financial services, but I took this decision when I had my first child, because we thought, oh God, we're going to have a child, we've got to be grown-ups about this kind of thing, and we looked for a financial advisor, and I was really bolshy at the time, because I've obviously changed hugely, but I was like, I'm not investing in this, I'm not putting any money in that, I'm not doing that, not doing that, not this. And my husband's like, humour her, she's pregnant. But we got this great guy who let us basically build our own financial investments, and then when there have been crashes and things, ours has stayed really flat all the way through, and it's been great, because we're both self-employed, so having that that there, and for me not to feel happy that any money that we have is being used sensibly, but also we weren't subject to some of the ups and downs at the market at all.
Definitely. And there's sort of research out there that will show that investing in like renewables, in climate climate tech, they actually are giving people better returns than a lot of the sort of standard markets. And it's getting ever easier. There's lots of apps you can download on your phone, so you can invest small amounts. It's not all about masses of money. So yeah, I think there's lots of very different ways coming through to use that investment piece. I came across another one today that's like an activist account. So you basically buy shares in the big companies, but then you use your vote to force them to change from within.
That's good.
So,
yeah.
I think it's a really interesting space, and it's not the space it was a few years ago. So I think if that does interest you, then there's so much that has changed in the last couple of years.
It's so much more accessible, isn't it? So much more accessible. So yeah, I think going back to the question, which was what need to be the big focused areas, is going to have to be, and it sounds really big and scary, but system change, but us having our small part to play in that system change by being members of things, by being a citizen, by hassling our MPs, by looking where we put our money. All of those kind of things are so important. And I think actually going right back to the beginning, talking about Pebble and activism generally, I think it's about, there's lots and lots of individuals doing amazing things, but now it's time to start pulling all that together, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got the information
really whether that's looking holistically at everything you do, whether that's talking to friends and family, whether that is joining something and being a collective or a community. And that's part of the reason we launched the Ripples community as well, is to bring people together. And what we want to do this year is set people 2 or 3 campaigns over the year that they can all get involved in, so we can start to shift the dial on one big issue, all of us together, so all of us working in different ways but around the same issue, and seeing what we can achieve. Because I think there is a lot of frustration for individuals who perhaps have done the easy stuff, they've swapped their cups and their bottles and their bags, and and they want to do more, and they want to see that impact. And I think that's where it starts to get a bit more complicated. And we need to give people those structures that they want to spend the time and help with. There's a lot of goodwill out there. We saw that with COVID. People are desperate to help other people, but without a structure to do it, it all gets a bit fragmented.
I think that's a really good point about wanting to see the results. I think especially now with our current political situation, that people feel that they're unempowered or disempowered rather, and they're actually not feeling that when they do something it actually makes a difference. And I think campaigns and things like that, and showing people that they can make a difference, because I do think that's part of the mental health challenges people have. They think, well, what's the point? What I do makes no difference. But it really does.
And I kind of think that's actually why we're not all out protesting on the street at the moment with our current political situation, because we've seen it not really cut through when people have protested. XR's a brilliant motivating force, but the changes they've asked for haven't appeared. They've started conversations amazingly, but I think people are feeling very disenfranchised, and
yes, I think so.
Find different ways to bring them back in.
But like you say, I think getting people talking about it is a really good first step for the people right early on in the journey. But having something when you're a bit further along in the journey, having things like Pebble and like hopefully this podcast, having things where people can go for information, can work out what to do next, and feel empowered, because having that feeling of that you're not, it doesn't make a difference, just doesn't help you and doesn't help anyone else either, to be really blunt.
No, and there's a lot of quotes and thinking that we tie you can tie hope very clearly to action, and in my book I call it active hope, and I know Greta Thunberg talks about it a lot. Without action you can kind of lose hope, and hope is found in action, and if you don't know what action to take, then it can all start to feel very hopeless, and that's the opposite of what we need. And
community will give you hope as well. So if you act together with other people, that will give you community, which is really helpful. And anyone interested in more about XR, I had I think it's 2 podcasts ago, I interviewed Rachel Smithlight from XR, who's also it's Extinction Rebellion, who is also a Green Party councillor, and that's a podcast well worth listening to, because she was talking about the experience of being at COP26 and being an activist, and so basically being arrested for sitting on roads and things like that, which is not obviously for everybody, but it's very interesting to hear it from the inside of what it's actually like, and a fair play to her.
Super brave. I'm definitely gonna listen to that.
That's good. I hope you like it. Okay, so the next question I think we started in on already, which is great, which is, we know that the biggest impacts that have to happen will be in government, economy and big business. So what changes do you think are already happening in these areas, and what do we need to do to move all of that forward? Like I said, we've already started tackling some of this, but I think it's quite important.
Yeah, it is. It's really important. And I think this is a really thorny issue as well, because there was so much promised around COP that didn't materialize, or it did materialize in a sort of very high level way. And actually we're still waiting for a lot of the detail. And I would hope that this year is the year that we get all of that detail, and we can start analysing it as businesses and industries and, pressure groups and everything else. Because without the detail of how we're going to get the UK to net zero by 2050, none of us can make a start in holding people to account, in tracking and, seeing how we can push on things. So I think there's, there were massive figures being bandied around in October, like £90 billion worth of investment, nearly 500,000 jobs in this green economy. We desperately need those details to come through so we can start looking at what are the areas that are going to be invested in, what are the skills that are needed, what jobs are going to be available, who's going to do all of those things, because obviously the jobs market is completely sort of unequal at the moment as well. So I would hope that this year is a real qualifying year of all of those big bits of information that we need, so we can start on that journey to 2050 and to net zero, because at the moment it feels like we haven't started it.
No.
We've talked about it, and then everyone's just like put it back in a drawer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you say they read all these huge numbers have been talked about, but then there's not been any sense of how it's going to happen. But also we know from pre-COP26 that numbers were promised and it didn't happen. So where is the faith? Where is the evidence that it is actually going to happen? Where's the plan to show that it's actually going to be there?
I was just checking in before I came on the podcast, and I just wanted to make sure I had the right updates. And like, we're still waiting for a strategy on agriculture and land use. We're still waiting for a strategy on how we're actually going to bring down our emissions. We're still waiting for a strategy on how we're going to move away from gas and coal. Yep. The National Food Strategy hasn't been actioned or ratified. All of these things where a lot of the hard work's been done. People have put their suggestions in, a lot of lobbyists and pressure groups have sort of worked on policies, but there doesn't seem to be much movement.
There's no will, is there? There's no real political will to do it. Like you say, there's some amazing people.
I think there's will from everybody else.
Yeah, but interestingly, I maybe I'm idealistic, I don't know, but I actually felt that Alok Sharma did have that will. It seemed to me that he was taken over by this and really believed in it. At the time anyway. Maybe it's changed, but he seems to, not that he's disappeared exactly, but he could have, if he had the remit, I suppose, he could actually be pushing for some of this to happen, but I feel like it's been slowed down.
Definitely. And I think when I've sort of been looking at this, and one of the suggestions that comes up from a lot of people is there's no interconnected like government body or agency or department for net zero. There's no one bringing all of this together in a holistic way to kind of go, okay, well, we're going to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions, we're going to sort this out, and that's going to go into a bigger picture. There's no one bringing this all together. So it's every department for itself at the moment. Yeah. And I think that's not going to help things. It's also not going to help communicate it out to everybody at a citizen level, because we all need to go on this journey together. We're all going to have to change our behaviours to some degree, as well as sort of industry change and governmental change. So I think it needs to be a sort of really, in an ideal world, it would be a vision-led program for the next 20 years that everybody feels a part of, and everyone feels pride and, coming together. And, it's a radical transformation of the country. I think we're quite a long way from that, unfortunately.
Because it's still seen as a negative thing. I mean, I was thinking, my oldest is 16 now, and we were talking about, do we have to get some crummy little petrol car so that he can do a manual driving test in a year, start doing that kind of thing. This is ridiculous. He's not going to be using a car. And I know I'm shouting into the wilderness, but I'm saying, like, he's not going to have a car. He probably won't have one because he'll be taking public transport or have an electric car if he's really lucky, maybe, but there's nothing. They're still being pushed down this road of manual driving tests. I know it's a silly example, but it's like
they're still building a coal-powered fire.
Well, yes, that's a big example. Exactly. So it just feels like that. There's like you say, there needs to be the flag waving at the top, going, yes, this is a great thing for our country. Let's all work on it together. Call Britannia Mark II or whatever, and let's make this, Green Britannia, whatever you want to call it. But then it's got to filter down through the different departments and actually make sense to people, because at the moment it's not joined up at all.
No, and I think as well, like, there's a huge bit in between us as individuals and the top level, and all of those people in the middle need to be taken on it, and it all needs to be roadmapped and timelined and be made accountable as well. So what happens if we don't hit it in 2050? What is, do the lights go off?
Don't look up scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so.
Yeah, no, it's interesting though, because I think local councils, I just noticed on LinkedIn, the local councils seem to be embracing this, don't they? I mean, I noticed that, well, maybe it's just Suffolk, but I noticed in Suffolk they've set up a department for climate change partnership and all of these things going on. I've got a chat with them next week, but to me that was really exciting that the councils are getting behind all of this. Hopefully.
I think actually, and this was going to be my not to be all doom and gloom. I think the bit in the middle, the local councils, even sort of county councils, and then industry leaders themselves, so different industries, I think they are leading the way, and people like city mayors as well. The bits in between us as individuals and the very top level seem to be the most forward thinking. They're the ones that are pivoting, they're the ones that are pushing and actually leading the way, and providing that sort of eco morality in a way. We definitely don't have it, I don't think, at the top, But I think, alongside that, consumers wanting to shop their values and support brands that are doing good, brands are becoming much more purpose-led and philanthropic and really pushing for innovation, and trying to change their industries at the same time. I think a few years, even a few years ago, brands perhaps might, really, really purpose-led brands perhaps were outliers and working on their own in their industry. And I think now there's much more collaboration in those industries to try and change that whole sector. For example, like, we work quite a lot with Toast Ale, and they put together a whole collaboration campaign with like 26 different breweries to all work together to try and agree changes to the brewing industry, to the beer industry. And you were talking like Guinness and the massive ones, and tiny little craft breweries, and it's the first time that's ever happened.
Yeah,
so
that's
I think
the kind of thing, isn't it?
that's
the kind
what
of
we need to be working for and working
Definitely.
with.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, I mean, we're part of the NatWest Accelerator for the third cohort, and I know you've been on it yourself before, haven't you? So big businesses like that, which, there's accusations of greenwashing. They're trying to attract customers by saying the right things, but at the same time, they are then helping a lot of small businesses do things that are better for the planet and more of a social enterprise. So there is work going on. I think you're right. There is quite a lot to be cheerful about. It's just keeping that going and making sure that it goes bottom up rather than what it should be doing is coming top down.
Definitely. And I think that also we are on a bit of a countdown. And I think, while, if you're not an activist, or you're living with someone who is fairly green or eco, and they get a bit frazzled and start going, oh my God, we've only got so many years left.
Yeah. We
genuinely do have a countdown of when it is possible to make change. And I think, we need to harness that momentum and that pace. We need to pick up the pace.
Yeah, and I think, but it does frighten people. I mean, I'm one of the people you describe. Every now and again I go, oh my God, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. Then my husband's like, okay, well, what can we do? Let's step through. What can we do? What's in our power? He's very good at that. And it's trying to do those things, but not giving that fright to people, about what's going to happen. But at the same time, the urgency is there. I mean, digressing slightly, because we mentioned Don't Look Up. If anyone hasn't seen it, please watch it. It's really good. But the whole I thought that was a really clever way of doing it, by making it an entertaining film that you can't help but laugh. Major stars in it: Meryl Streep, Leonardo DiCaprio, people like that. It was fantastic. But at the same time, that clear message of, if something terrible is coming, you either you ignore it and don't look up and see it, or you try and do something about it. But you then have to fight if you know that you're right. You have to, and I say fight, I don't mean beat people up, I mean push and keep talking, don't give up, I suppose.
That's it. And I think I mean, the movie I found absolutely terrifying. To be honest, it was far scarier than like Armageddon or one of these big like blockbuster movies, because it felt far more real. You could imagine people going into some heads of state and telling them about a terrible thing that is coming our way, and that being the response. It felt, one step not that far removed from reality. But it was very clever. And I think as well, so many people have seen it and so many people are talking about it, which again is, like you said earlier, is half the battle of just joining all these dots, but between all the different problems that we have coming down the line with climate change that are here now, and all the different solutions. And I think, again, people can get overwhelmed by what to do next, or what to do first, or what's worse, or it helps bring it all together, I think.
Yeah, I think as well, though, there was a bit of a wake-up call for me in it as well, in that some of the people who are the activists and who are really serious, you've got to point your finger and laugh at them as well, in a way, because what they were saying was really, really true, but they were so intense, and I know people like that, and I'm sure people would say that I'm like that. Of course I'm not, but that when they were on the media show and going, hey everyone, we're all gonna die, I've met people like that, especially in organizations like XR, and that's no disrespect, because they are really in it and they know it and they understand it and they're frightened, but we need to get media people like yourself actually on side, who are going to take it seriously, but at the same time not terrify the poop out of people.
Well, that's it. And that's, I mean, from the very word go, that was our approach at Pebble, is like, okay, we're not going to talk about the doom and gloom, and we're not going to do the, oh my God, we're going to do that. Hey, look at this. This is happening. This is really exciting. Check out this new invention. Oh my God, there's a new way of doing this that's going to reduce your impact. Or these people are really pushing for change, and try and take people along that sort of very positive journey, and also make what is the more sustainable option, make it desirable, and make it, so no matter what, issue it's trying to solve, it's something you'd want anyway. So I think we're never going to get people to stop shopping or stop consuming, but can we get them to do it in a way that is less destructive, it's just less, and sort of harness that power into a more helpful funnel, basically.
Yeah, make it a positive thing. So I mean, you hear lots of things of how many times can I reuse this wrapping paper. There's lots of things with Christmas this year, wasn't there, about still everyone having a fantastic Christmas, but maybe not sending so many cards or doing things in a different way,
Yeah, and I think that again, the will, I think, to try and experiment is there in a way that it hasn't been before, but we've got to keep it going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, I think keeping hopeful, keeping positive is a really, really good thing. And that actually, again, very nicely, like we planned it, brings me on to the next question, which is, I think more and more people are getting the message about needing to make changes, but there's a lack of clarity as to what individuals can do to make a difference. Now, we've talked about getting involved in things, and we've even talked about bamboo toothbrushes, but what are your top tips if you're an individual listening to this podcast and you're thinking, what can I actually do to make a difference?
Okay, so my sort of 3 areas would actually have all to do with the home, so they're super easy and everyone can do them. One is to sort of commit to buying nothing in the fashion stakes for as long as possible. So either stick with what you've got, or swap, sell, or buy secondhand, so that you're just keeping what's in motion going, rather than buying new. It's such the whole fast fashion world is so damaging for so many different reasons, from the overconsumption to the toxic dyes to the slave labor to just absolutely incredible amounts of damage. So just stepping out of that is a huge thing that you can do, and there's so many other options to sort of make sure that you're not just never buying clothes ever again. But I think sort of seeing how long you can go and setting yourself a target or a challenge is a really good thing.
I think I was on a panel with Safia Mini last year, and who's the founder of People Tree, and she gave a figure out that there's enough clothes in the world already to last us 11 years. We don't actually need to make clothes for 11 years.
There's the fast fashion industry contributes 140 billion new items of clothing a year. That's on top of the 140 billion it produced last year and the year before and the year before. So there's, I think, 8 billion people in the world, 7.8, something like that. Nearly 8. So it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So yeah, stepping out of that as much as you can, I think it would be my number one. My number 2 is reducing meat and dairy, and that doesn't mean going full vegan if that's not something you feel comfortable with or don't want to commit to something, but I think just looking at every meal that you have across the week and seeing how you can make it meat-free or dairy-free, and just breaking it up like that rather than making a massive commitment, feels a lot more approachable, feels a lot more accessible to people. There was this really lovely way of putting it at a conference a couple of years ago, which have said, you have 21 votes for the planet that you want a week, and that's your sort of 3 meals a day. So how many of those votes are you going to sort of move away from meat and dairy, or the industrial meat and dairy complex that we all know is at the root of a lot of problems? So that's my number 2. And then my number 3 would actually be tackling your bathroom, because there is so much stuff going on in there that we can easily swap out, and you really won't notice a difference. In fact, you'll love things even more. Things like, people don't realize, but things like, disposable razors can never be recycled because of the mix of plastic and metal. Obviously, anything like period products and sanitary products are just a nightmare. All that single-use plastic that litters up people's showers, baths and shower trays and stuff can all go really quickly. And it just sort of terrifies me every time you walk into like Boots, or you walk down the beauty aisle in a supermarket, and it's just wall-to-wall single-use plastic still, even though there are so many other options out there. It's, we talk about people swapping over simple stuff, but there's so much more we can do, and there's so many more people that could do it. And I think it's just about making it normal.
Exactly. That was what I
I
was.
think more of us that do it. So if you go to someone's house and you can see they've got refill everything, or they've got hard bar shampoo bars, or they've got, you know, reusable razors and all that kind of stuff, it just starts to normalize.
It really does.
All of that. And I think it's such a huge has such a huge impact on the world, and actually the impact on us is negligible.
And it's better. It's even better.
So
it's
much
not even negligible. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you know, I'm not trying to say that I've got the best hair in the world or anything, but I use solid shampoo and conditioner bar from the Kind 2. It's a company run by.
They're lovely.
Yeah,
they're so lovely.
But I found, and I said this on another podcast, I mean, I got quite long hair, but I only have to wash my hair about once a week now, which I know people think is quite skanky, but actually I don't have to wash it any more often than that, because it's sudden change. Yeah, so it's great, really, and it feels great and everything. But one thing you said about bathroom, I did feel, I completely felt like I got my bathroom back, because we now don't have anything, you know, in there that's in a bottle, really, and it's just like, oh, with space.
Yeah, that's it. It's easy to pack to go away now that we can go away again.
Yeah, exactly. But the normalization is a really interesting one, because I obviously keep buying people as gifts solid shampoo, you know, lots of soap, and I got loads of soap this year. I've got so much soap now. Everyone bought me soap. I must be really smelly, but it's quite an interesting one to make it that a normal thing, because soap had almost gone out of fashion, hadn't it? Maybe 5 or 6 years ago it was always, let's send you some body lotion and give you this lovely bubble bath or shower gel or whatever, and it's bringing that back to being normality, that it's actually a better option for you as well.
Definitely. And it also means that you're probably supporting a smaller business. It's probably a British business, you know, it's keeping money in the local economy, it's supporting people that are probably trying to run their businesses in a better way. There's reduced packaging. There are so many other benefits as well. And you're getting a better experience, and you're getting better quality ingredients and all that kind of stuff, reducing your chemicals. And that will be the difference in your hair. It probably, the bar, I know Sue's Kind 2 bars, I don't think have palm oil or SLS in them, so which is what traditionally makes the shampoo lather, but actually it's really bad for your hair. So yeah, there's so many other benefits, and I think that's the bit for me in the messaging for sustainability that doesn't come across, and something I'm very passionate about putting back in with Pebble is, it's not, like you said, it's not a sacrifice. It's not, you're not losing out, you're gaining.
Exactly. No, it's a positive. It's only a positive. And going back to your other two things, I jumped on bath. I've gone backwards. I've gone to the bathroom one. I think the meat dairy one's also very interesting, isn't it? Because I've noticed a lot of the supermarkets now have started advertising like 50-50 products. So rather than it being all meat mince, they'll have half meat mince and half vegetables. And that's a really nice compromise solution for people. Or even if you are a home cook, you know, if you really can't give up your meat mince, mix it with something else. You can't give up all chicken, then maybe have something else in there as well, a bit more vegetable or something. And again, that's giving you that health advantage. You will feel better, you will lose weight, you'll have more energy, you know.
Yeah, so we've one of our New Year's resolutions was to sort of give up, we'd already given up like red meat and fish after Seaspiracy, but kind of just try not to eat meat anymore at all. So yeah, we're doing half veganuary, half veggie version. But it, you know, I think trying to like pigeonhole people in boxes or force them to do it for like a whole month and then not do it for the rest of the year, or say that you've got to sort of say what your meal choices are, I think it can all feel very pressured, and it can all feel very like, you know, oh, if I put a foot wrong, you know, someone's gonna shout at me, or I'm not good enough, or what, all these other sort of anxiety things. And I think after the last couple of years we've had, which has gone crazy with anxiety, we just need to be kinder to ourselves and to each other. So I think just looking at it week by week, meal to meal, you know, can I make this veggie? Can I make it vegan? Brilliant. You know, if you have a roast chicken once in a while, you know, it's not the end of the world. It's all about that reducing for the long term. You know, we talk about it being a marathon, not a sprint. And I think it feels like a better way to look at it.
And I think there are a lot of extreme people on, say, Twitter and other social media platforms who will point the finger and say, you've got to be vegan, it's really important to be vegan, and everything like that. And yes, it's important, and it's also important that we have those extreme people, because they balance society. but for most people they're in the middle somewhere. And as we've said right from the beginning, taking that journey, so they're taking their journey towards more healthy eating, and healthy living, and better for the planet living. And it's there's no fingers to be pointed here. You know, you do what's right for you, I think.
That's it. And I think there's this idea that whatever we swap to has no consequences. And this is something I talk a lot about in my book, is that everything has an eco impact, everything has a carbon impact. And sometimes things have unintended consequences. You know, a lot of us ate vegan and then realized, actually, do you know what, flying in avocados halfway around the world and contributing to that problem, probably not a good thing, you know. So I think it's got to, the answer is always a lot more grey, isn't it? It's got to be a judgment call, and it's got to be something that suits your lifestyle.
Yes, because most of us can't afford the time and don't want to grow everything and keep our own livestock and grow our own vegetables. And
I mean, I would love it, but it's not really applicable in a third floor flat.
No, exactly. And very,
you know,
time poor. I mean, organizations like Abel and Cole and people like that they yes, I accept that they are slightly more expensive for your average person, but they don't use any air freight and those kind of things, and as much local as they can. But you can get local vegetable boxes from farmers, you know, and the milkman, in fact, I believe they do as well. So there's lots of things you can do as an individual to improve your diet. And funny enough, I switched on TV last night when I was doing that kind of end of day in front of the TV, and there was a program, there's You Are What You Eat, which used to be on years ago, but they had this young lady making an amazing effort she'd bring her weight down, because she put a lot of weight down over lockdown, a lot of weight on. Anyway, basically the short story was they taught her to cook vegetables, and it was just, and have a healthier diet. And she was like, wow, I've never learned how to do this before. I've never learned how to cook, you know, a piece of chicken with some vegetables. And I thought that's what a lot of people need. That's that helping hand to balance their meals and cook them for themselves and not just eat out of packets.
Definitely. And I have to say, like, I bought my partner the Anna Jones cookbook for Christmas, a one pot planet plate or something, and it's super simple veggie cooking. Oh my god, we've eaten out of it every day since we got it. It's amazing.
We got one that's certainly meals for one, that I can't remember what it is anyway. One of those, well, they're really good. They've got things like halloumi tikka masala and things like that, which is just gorgeous and really easy. Anyway, we won't go into recipes. The third one you said was fashion, which obviously I can talk about till the cows come home, but I promise I won't do. But yeah, I totally agree. There's more than enough clothes on the planet at the moment. I would say, for those of people who aren't doing the don't buy anything new, choose really carefully where you're buying from. You know, make sure that things are a bit more, can tell you the good stuff about what they are actually doing, are contributing to projects, you know. And the other thing around that is the green claims code, which obviously we've talked about on a previous podcast, but the whole idea that sometimes companies are telling you things that may not have any basis, and you just need to be a little bit careful. If you're spending your money, find out where that money's going and what it's contributing to, whether it's fashion or anything else.
And I think as well, there's some, we were talking about this on a talk last night, but there's quite a few terms coming up in fashion that people think they're doing the right thing, but they're not. You know, I'm sure you've got opinions on things like vegan leather, which is pleather and made from you know, a petrol byproduct. There's you know, the whole idea of using some recycled fibres and some non-recycled, and muddling up sort of plastic with organic fibres, which
you can't split it out again. Personally, I mean, I've got a hardline view that I don't think plastic has any place in clothing at all, but I think that's a challenge when you're doing something like underwear, because people want a little bit of stretch. We're back to bloomers if we don't have that. So obviously there's got to be a bit of a compromise, but in general, most of our clothing, we don't need to have plastic in it. And if you're going to, there's again more than enough plastic in the world already, so we do have to recycle some, but maybe clothing's not the right place because of microfibers and all of that. Maybe there's better uses for recycled plastic than clothing. But personally, I think we've got wool, we've got hemp, we've got cotton, you know, and so many other different fabrics that have a much lower carbon footprint. So I'd rather go with those personally.
Definitely. And I'm really excited to see what the sort of the cutting edge of all of those comes into, because hemp's being used more, isn't it? And things like the sort of nettle fibres and things like exploring, and again, there's so much room for creativity and amazing invention.
There is. I mean, last summer we did the Festival for Natural Fibres in London, and there was speakers on a panel. I was chairing a panel on UK grown British fibres, and I think there was about 8 different people on the panel. It was one of the most largest panels I'd ever sort of tried to walking along speaking to people. There was nettle, and there was lots of different wool and leather and all sorts of things there, talking about leather from that local village, you know, all being the animals being in that village, the leather being cured in that village, all of that. So it was really interesting, almost going back in history, but with a modern twist on that. So it was really, really interesting. But yeah, there's so much interesting work that's happening. And I had a call the other day with an organization in India that is obviously doing regenerative cotton farming, which I'm really passionate about. But what I hadn't quite grasped was that they'd been audited and actually had the cotton starts with a carbon credit. So you're actually starting the whole supply chain with a carbon credit. So if you're then using hand weaving and hand spinning, which is carbon neutral, then you could actually end up, you probably are not going to, by the time you shipped it to the UK, have a carbon negative product there, but it's really low carbon compared with what mass production would be.
That's it. And I think it's going back, isn't it, to those heritage ways, those older traditions, and actually respecting the clothing and respecting the processes and the fibers and the care that's gone into it, rather than just like buying something for a fiver and wearing it once.
Exactly.
Not respecting anything about that. And I think that's the bit for me that is a mindset change. And I know there's a financial cost to a lot of that. So I'm like many people who don't have an awful lot of money for clothes, so I tend to buy like one really good ethical piece and then pad everything out with secondhand.
Exactly. Investment. It's investing in that really one good item. If you can, obviously a lot of people can't, but what you said in the beginning about not buying anything at all new, that's the answer to that one, isn't it? You're being ethical, but you can also buy some great things secondhand. You can learn to knit things, and swaps with your friends, all those things. It's a great way of living and benefits to all of us. You get new clothes and it's good. It's just a mindset change, like you say. So much of this is a mindset change. It's really important. Anyway, I'm coming to the end now because I realize we've been chatting away for an hour, but how can people find you, Georgina, find out more about Pebble, join your Ripples community and basically get on board? And I also know that you've written a book, so tell us about that as well and where they can read it and buy it.
So I have the book here, so that's what the book
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence. I had some other books with me as well, because I was like, I didn't know if you wanted other recommendations.
Oh, please do.
So the book's called Is It Really Green? It came out last January. It's available in all online and offline bookshops and on Audible. If you get it on Audible, it's me reading it. So you can read me. And that's done really well. And I'm really happy that's helped lots of people. It's all about solving eco dilemmas at home. So exactly what we've been talking about, but giving you very sort of top line, do this, don't do this, this is the best way, think about this. So things to think about, things to swap to. So if you're time poor and just want a quick answer, it's a book to go back to. In terms of finding me otherwise, so Pebble Magazine is pebblemag.com. All of our content is free, and all you need to do is sign up to our weekly newsletter, which goes out on a Wednesday, which has all of our new content and product suggestions and tips and advice. And the Ripples community is on Mighty Networks, and you can find us at pebble.mn.co. And again, that's all free to sign up to, and you're welcome to come along to any of our virtual events or our book club or anything we're doing there. There's lots of topics and conversations happening in there. So yeah, if you want to take that step on and do more than just have a little read, then that is the place to go. And on social media, we're at Pebble Magazine on everything, I think.
That's great. Thank you, Georgia. And we'll put those links on the podcast blurb so people can click through and find out more about you. But that's been absolutely fascinating and lovely to chat to you again. And yeah, I'm sure there's lots of things afterwards I'll think, oh, I wish I'd asked her this, I wish I'd asked her that, but maybe we'll get you back at some point. And what's your personal plans? Are you having another book coming out?
I've actually got a travel book coming out in March.
I remembered that. Yeah.
So it's all train travel around Europe. So suggestions and trips and routes and things that you can take. So it was actually due out about 18 months ago, but obviously it's been put back. So hopefully it comes out in March. And yeah, we've got some really big plans with Pebble this year. So sort of quietly working on those for the next couple of months, and then hopefully we can reveal all at Easter.
That sounds great. No, the book, your second book, I remember, because as you know, train travel is something I'm absolutely passionate about. And we took a train across to Russia.
Oh, wow.
That was 2019, I think. We love doing that, but obviously haven't been able to. But my younger son, who's just turned 14, he has been planning with maps that this summer's holiday, and I hope it goes ahead, is that we literally go all around Europe. And he wants us to do 18 countries in 28 days, and he's worked out all the train times and everything. So if it goes ahead, it'll be fantastic. But
I hope it does. Yeah, I can't wait to just go abroad. I'm hoping to get down to like a permaculture farm at the south of France in May, and doing it by train and stuff. So
whereabouts is that in south of France?
Oh, good question. It's a friend that's organising it. Yeah, I'm just going, yes, that sounds great. I've
done south of France by train a few times, and it's great. It's great.
Oh, I can't wait.
But no, I love taking the train for these things, and it's for me, it's just a holiday. The time you're on the train, because you can read books, you can chat, you can play games, and we had a ball going to Russia. It was 2 days and 2 nights on the train across Belarus. So I'm not sure I do that now, but
maybe not that.
Not at the moment.
Yeah, not at the moment. But
yeah. Good. Well, great, well, fantastic. Good luck with that book, and thank you very much for spending the time. And it's been really great to talk to you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been really lovely, and like you said, I could chat for hours, but yeah, leave it there.
Another time with a glass of wine.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Georgina.
All right, see you later. Bye.